here we are. We're going to make a grill. We're going to make a grill for the Cobra. And it's just going to be a very simple shape. As you can see, this is basically an oval shape. I'm going to talk probably less about the oval shape and probably more about how best to make the grill work for automation itself. If you're, again, I'll cover this again. If you're new to modeling, I urge you to do this series first. I linked it in the last video. I'll link it in this video also. And so by the time you're done with this half-hour video and building this sword, and you don't even have to do the second video. The second video is mostly about texturing it and giving it color and all that kind of stuff, which you don't need to worry about. If you just do the first video, you'll learn so many basics about modeling and how to use the various tools to get all these shapes. And it's a way better video than anything I could make. So watch that, and then from there you should be able to follow along pretty easy. So anyway, going back to the photo, I'm going to show you how to set this up in Blender. All you got to do is save the image. I've already done this, but just save the image somewhere and then open up your Blender program. And here's the Cobra body that I made. You're just going to have an empty scene. So let's basically, I think what I'm going to do for the grill, and I'm not going to do this on screen so much. I'm going to actually copy these vertices so I get the exact shape that I want. But that doesn't going to teach you anything, so I'm not going to actually show you doing that. I will just walk you through the steps of making a grill. So let me go ahead and hide that. And so to set up an image, what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to come over here to Empty, and come over here to Image. And we're going to do an empty image, and you'll get a little block. Blocks it looks like this. And then you're going to come over here, and you'll need to select this little kind of three-starred looking thing. And you're going to open the file. Wherever you saved it, you just got to go find it. Where did I put that? I think I put it here under Cobra. I'm going to switch it. If you switch these little blocks over here, you can actually see the images, and there it is. So I'm going to load that into the game, and there it is. So now what I want to do is orient this in the direction it needs to be. So to do that, I can hit R to rotate, and then I can hit X to constrain the rotation along the X-axis like this. And then I can just type in the number 90 to make it rotate 90 degrees. And then hit Enter, and it's done. So now we are oriented. Now I want you to take note of the direction of this gizmo up here, with the Y going that way. Like that, yeah. With the Y going that way. That is the direction that your grill fixture is going to need to sit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit number pad 1, and that's going to put me in front view. And oh, you can see I have a blueprint. This is from the Cobra model. If I wanted to, I could actually just use that, but it's not quite the shape I want, is it? It's kind of a frowny looking little ace looking. I kind of actually want more of that for this tutorial. That'll work. So let me actually just hide those. So all we're looking at is what we have downloaded. So what I'm going to do is, now, one little caveat before I continue on here. I've got the screen kind of keys thing going on over here so you can see what I'm doing, and you're going to see this one pressed a lot. Now, this is not the hotkey that you're going to use. This is middle mouse button for you. So whenever you see this, just pretend it's the middle mouse button. I don't use the middle mouse button because it causes me some pain in my arm. It gives me tendonitis issues. So I've rekeyed the middle mouse button to the tilde key. So whenever you see that, you're going to see like Shift tilde a lot. You're going to see Control tilde a lot, and this kind of stuff. And you're going to see tilde alone, and it's just middle mouse button. So Shift middle mouse, Control middle mouse is what that all means. So now that I have gotten that out of the way, the rest of it is the same. The rest of it should be the same. I'm using basically stock Blender shortcuts for everything else. So what we're going to do, I did that in front view. You can see I hit number pad 1 to get us into front view. And this is front view orthographic mode. And I'm going to hit G. I'm going to get this centered up. I'm going to use maybe the paint line to make sure I get this right in the center. You can see it's not quite perfect. You know, maybe this camera is a little bit off, so maybe I can just rotate it with the R key a little bit. I'll hit Shift to kind of slow down how I can do it more finely this way. I'm going to get it kind of there. And it's not super important, right? It's not super duper important. Let me go ahead and move this up a little bit, and I'm going to hit the Z key to constrain it so that it'll only move up and down. Sorry about the vertigo. And I'm just going to kind of put it right about. I just want it to be roughly in the middle. I just kind of want this point to be roughly in the middle. And then we can start modeling from here. And so I think the easiest way to model a grill is to start with a plane. So let me just go back into regular view here. And another thing I want to do before we get too involved is I only want to see this photo when I'm in orthographic mode like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. See those little 3 points have turned into a picture now? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to untick this box that says display perspective. So now when I go into regular perspective mode, it's gone and I don't see it anymore. Only when I'm in front view do I see it. So that's what I want. So let's go ahead and start modeling this grill out. I'm going to hit Shift A, and we're going to start with a mesh plane. Now, let me go ahead and hit the N key to open up the tabs over here, and you're going to see this number set here called scale. And if I start messing with the size of this in object mode, which is what we're in object mode, you're going to see the scale is going to change. We don't want the scale to change. We can always reset the scale back to 1 later, but we don't want to mess with the scale. We want to change our object only in edit mode. So we're going to hit Tab, we're going to enter edit mode, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scale that down because it's too big, obviously. And I probably want it to be, each one of these squares is about 1 meter, right? So I probably want this to be less than a full meter in width. I probably want it to be about, maybe that big, stock. That probably looks about right. Now let's go ahead and orient this so that it makes sense. So I'm going to hit R, X, and then type in 90. Again, just like we did with the picture. And then I can go into front view like that. And now what I can do is I can actually scale up my photograph and get out of edit mode. Let me tab on the photograph. Let me scale it up until it's about the size I want it to be. Tab out of that. Tab back into our plane. Alright, let's get back into edit mode, and bada boom. And there we go, we have our plane. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and model the left side and the right side. That doesn't make any sense, right? I want to model half of it, and then I want the other half to automatically be modeled. So let's do that. So let me just grab this over here, and I'm going to come up here into the, where'd it go? Where's the transforms? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I want to transform this right onto the 0. So I'm just going to actually type in 0, and that'll put my little lines for here right along the 0 axis of the x-axis, which runs this way. So now I have my plane, and why am I not seeing it very well? Oh, I'm actually seeing through my plane. I don't have X-ray mode on. I don't know why. Maybe it's maybe what I need to do is move this image back just a touch. And if I hit G to move it and Y, yeah, actually let me make it so I can see it in perspective. Let me move it back just a little, like that. Maybe a little bit more. Doesn't really matter how far back it is. It can actually be way back here if we want, so that we never have to worry about it. Doesn't really matter, because in perspective mode, or in orthographic mode, it stays the same. There we go. Now I can see my plane. So now what I want to do is I want to mirror this so that there's the other half of this grill. So I'm going to come over here to this little wrench-looking guy. I'm going to add a mirror modifier, which is going to be over here. Bada boom. And now I have the other half of my mesh. On the mirror modifier, I'm going to tick this clipping box. And what that does is it prevents me from, if I grab this, it prevents me from going too far over. I can't go past the x-axis. So this is going to make sure that whatever I do, nothing gets out of alignment on this x-axis. I can't actually move these off the x-axis. They're stuck there. So it'll make sure that everything is perfectly mirrored right along the x-axis. Alright, so continuing on. Let's go ahead and hit S to scale. I'm going to hit Z to constrain it, and as you can see, it's kind of pulling just up like this. That's because I have it constrained to this element right here. Now, let me go ahead and get rid of this tab. I don't need it anymore, so I'm going to hit N to hide that toolbar. I'm going to hit the period key, and that's going to pull up this kind of pie menu over here. And you can see I have active element selected. I'm going to change it for right now to 3D cursor. 3D cursor, like that. So now when I scale it, it scales to this point here, which is where the 3D cursor is. So let me go ahead and S. I'll constrain it to the Z-axis because I only want it to get shorter. And we'll move it to about there. Now I'm going to put this in X-ray mode so I can actually see through it. I can do that one of two ways. I can come up here and I can actually click the X-ray button. But I'm more of a hotkeys fan, so I'm going to hit Alt and Z. And that will make it so that I can kind of see through it. Now let me go ahead and move this down a little bit until I have it aligned. And I'm following this curvature here, this little outer kind of, maybe the outer part of this inside lip is basically the part I'm going to model. So let me go ahead and click drag the top, and I'm going to move that up on the Z-axis, like so. Let me grab these guys over here. I'm going to G and X, and I'm going to move those on the X-axis, about like so. Yeah, okay, cool. Now, it's a pretty symmetrical grill, which should make this pretty simple to model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control R, which is going to give me the loop cut option. Now, I just want one loop cut, right through the middle, just like that. That's all I want. And then what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit closer. And I'm going to add a few more loop cuts this way. And that looks like it's probably pretty good. It's a pretty good amount of loop cuts. So let's go ahead and just add, what was that, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loop cuts? Yeah, let's add 6 loop cuts. Now I'm going to open up that pie menu again by hitting period, and now I want it to be on active element. I want to select all this stuff here, and I want to make this middle one the active element. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start scaling this down until it starts to make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to hit S and Z, and I'm going to scale it down. And if it's moving too much, I'm going to hold down Shift so that it moves slower, a little more finely, precisely aligned. Now I'm going to hit Control, and I'm going to drag over this to deselect those lines. I want to reselect this point because I still want to be scaling from here. And I'm going to SZ again. And I'm just kind of following the top. I'm not really worried about the bottom too much right now. I'm just kind of following the top one. And I think I will ultimately make this completely symmetrical, which actually means I can mirror this in another way. What I can do is I can actually delete these. I can hit X, and I can hit X and delete these vertices right there. And then I can hit mirror on the Z, and that will mirror the bottom. Look at this. I'm not on the origin point. That's the issue. So in order to get this correct, I'm going to move this up. Let me open up my panel back here, and let me throw this at 0 on the Z so that it's lined up. Now it will be perfectly mirrored. Go back into the front view, and yeah. So what I'm going to want to do, because I don't like the way this is turning out, because this picture is not perfectly centered. So the easiest way to do this is let's just center the picture again. So I'm going to move this up until the picture is more or less centered on this red line here. That's your x-axis. Now I can go back into my thing here, and let's go ahead and just move these up. I'll hit G and Z, and I'll move them back up to the top to right about where we were. Now we're back in business. All right. A little bit of a detour, but that's okay. So I'm going to highlight these guys now, and I just want to highlight that one. And these are all the same, so it actually doesn't really matter which one I highlight for now. And I'm just going to kind of keep going down, just following this top line. So I'm going to S and Z. I'm going to scale down like that. And Control, drag, and deselect that. I'm going to scale Z and move that guy down. Same thing. Control, drag, scale Z, move this one down. About like so. Control, drag, and just keep doing that. Scale Z, following the curvature, trying to make it even. It doesn't quite look right, does it? Maybe I want to bring this one down just a touch more. I'm also paying attention to the curvature of this line. It's more important than the photo, that this line actually look good. So let me go ahead and deselect those. Oops, hold on, make sure that's active. Alright, scale Z. Okay, like so. And with this last one, we're not going to scale it. We're just going to move it into location, kind of halfway in between, until it kind of makes sense. So maybe right about here, and then I'm going to just go ahead and move this one along the x-axis until it kind of starts to look about like the same oval that we have over here. Okay, so we have a roughed out, oval-looking start to our grill. Cool, right? All right, great. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create the, let's just call this the inside line. I want to create the bezel. Now, I talked a little bit about the bezel in the first video, and you can't just cut a hole in a car and have it look okay. You have to cover up the UVMesh hole with a bezel, which is why all the fixtures have bezels. All the headlights have bezels. You might have seen that and wondered, why does everything have this lip on the edge? Well, it's to cover up the hole that gets cut in the body, because the hole is not straight. It's very jagged. So we will talk about how to make the hole less jagged, right, and how to make it look a little bit better. But for now, we're just going to try to focus on making a very simple grill shape. And I'm not going to get into more complex things like subsurf modeling and all that stuff. I just want to get this done in a very simple manner so that you can kind of see how to make a grill. So let's try to extrude this, right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll hit E to extrude, and now I'll have this, right? It's kind of going all over the place, right? So let me try scaling it out. If I scale it out, it scales out a little bit unevenly. But that's okay, because I can scale it out as far along the X as I want. And then I can scale it just along the, hold on, let me make sure that's the active element. Let me go ahead and scale it just along the Z now. And that gives us kind of a bezel. Now this is a huge bezel, but this is kind of what you're going to want to do with your first mod. Your first mod, give yourself room to work with. Just to make your life a little bit simpler. You can work on making smaller bezels and shrinking your bezels down as you get into making more complicated mods. But for now, just focus on keeping kind of a simple, nice, large, give yourself plenty of room to work with. Okay? So this is going to represent the outer edge of our grill. We have the basic shape now, and I don't need this photograph anymore. So let me just go ahead and, where are we at? I got to find it. Where did you put it? It's right here, right? All right. I actually have these in the wrong location. I'm going to move these just into the main scene here. This is not something that you really have to deal with as collections just yet. But collections are a great way to organize your work. So don't worry about it just now. We'll deal with it later. So what I want to do now is I want to select all these outer links. And I can do that by hitting Alt. And that, you see it selects the entire thing. So, I mean, I can deselect by hitting Control that, because this is all I want. I just want this selected. So let me go kind of move into perspective mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this out along the Y-axis. And I'm going to actually type in how far I want it to go. I want it to go about 11 centimeters. So I'm going to actually type in 11 centimeters. And that's about how deep I want it to go. Automation actually cuts you off closer to 10 centimeters. There, in the wiki, it'll tell you exactly what the number is, and you can type in, it's like 10.19 something something. I just rounded up to 11, doesn't matter. And this is going to give us some stuff that's mostly behind the body. And the reason why this is behind the body is so that you can layer fixtures over it. So maybe you put another fixture over here, another grill. If you didn't have this, there would just be a big hole and you would see into the car body. So it's important to have this little extra bit. Seems unnecessary, but it's necessary. Anyway, just go ahead and throw that in there. Now, that gives us our inside little bit here. Now, what about this part here? Don't I want to inset this so I have, you know, an actual grill look? Yes, I do. I do want to inset this. So what I'll do is I want to select all this inside stuff. And there's a couple of ways I can do that. And what I can do is I can click this, and I can hit Control, Shift, and click this button here, and it'll collect everything from the active element to what I just selected. Other ways you can do that is you can just hit 3 to go into face select mode, and you can just like Alt Shift face select and maybe deselect those. You can always just click one and then Control Shift click over there. Lots of different ways to select all these different faces, and you can kind of figure them out as you learn to model. So let's go ahead and give this an inset. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit extrude, not an inset. Inset's the wrong word for this. I'm going to extrude it, and I'm going to extrude it inward along the y-axis like this. Yeah, so let's get that in there, maybe about that far. How deep do we want this grill? Do we want a really deep grill? Maybe. I mean, we don't have a super deep grill. Let's make a super deep grill. Problem with going too deep is, I guess there's no real issue with it. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a really deep grill like that. Oh, what's this over here though, right? Well, I don't want that, right? This is weird. Well, let's delete it. I'll hit X, I'll delete the vertex, and it's gone. No problem. Don't worry about it. If you get those little edges around there, like when you do your extrusion, you might get a little straggler faces left behind. Just delete them. It's okay. Alright, and so now we have kind of a grill shape. Really crude looking grill shape though. Yeah? I mean, kind of boxy around the edge over here. You know, it's just really low poly, and yeah, so let's try to clean some of this up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Let me highlight everything by hitting A, and I want to smooth shade everything. I'm going to come over here to the face menu, and you're going to see shade smooth, and that is going to turn it into a giant blob. That's not particularly better, Hard Rooster. That just looks crappy too. That's alright. We'll fix this up. Don't worry about it. So, what I'm going to do to fix this up is I'm going to grab like this corner here, and actually let me go ahead and hit number 2 because I want to be in edge select mode, and I want to select this edge here as well. And we're going to do a bevel. And let me actually make sure that I don't have a face stuck inside this model. I don't want a face in here. Sometimes you'll get a face inside here, and you'll have to delete that, otherwise you'll get some weird reflections. Okay, so no face in there. So I'm going to hit Control B, and that's going to give me the bevel. And I'm going to scroll up until I have 3 cuts, like that. Okay? And that's going to clean up my reflection there a little bit. And maybe I don't want this to be so flat. Maybe I want this to stick out a little bit. So let me go ahead and hit Control R. I'm going to throw a little face in here, or I'm sorry, a little edge loop in there. And I'm just going to maybe, actually I should have done that before I beveled it. So let me go ahead and Control Z. Let's undo the bevel. Let's do that first. So let me rock this little guy in here first. I'm going to pull it out by hitting G and Y. And give myself a little bit of a curvature. Now let's go ahead and do our bevel. Control B, bevel it with 3 cuts. And that'll give me a little bit better looking curve here. It's still very chunky though, right? Okay, yeah, well we can solve that. Let's go ahead and go into front view here. And let's start solving this kind of chunky flow that we have going on and we don't need. So what I can do to do that is hit R, and I can have edge loops going, all the edge loops are going to end up going straight down, which is fine. This one here is going to go across. So let's do this one first. Okay, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to hit 1 so I can get this guy selected like so. Let me go Alt-Z so I can get an X-ray mode. I'm going to actually click all these and making sure that I'm in, using keypad 1, making sure that I'm in orthographic mode. I'm just going to move this out until it's a little bit more rounded. Now you could do this with the subsurf modifier, but we're not covering that in this particular video. Maybe I'll get into that with an additional mesh video. But for the first one, we're going to keep it simple. And we're just going to kind of use our eyes and use our imagination, and we're going to do this manually. I'm just going to kind of clean this up so that it's a little more round. And how's that looking? It's looking a lot better. It's much less chunky. So, I mean, that's a pretty good start. I mean, I think that's okay. So, another thing we need to do is we need to actually set this up, because right now, it's too far this way. It's too far along the y-axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into side view, and I like the left side view. So I'm going to hit Control and 3 on the number pad, and that's going to put me in side view. Now let me go ahead and get into X-ray mode, which is Alt-Z, and I'm going to box select everything here. And when I move it out, and what I want is I want this outermost rim to be 4 millimeters from the base of the y-axis. So where am I at? I'm about 3 millimeters. Let me make this my active element. Actually, according to this, yeah, no. Make that my active element. Go ahead and GY till it's, each one of these little squares here, and if I zoom in enough, is about 1 millimeter. So let me just move it out until this, see, it's 1, 2, 3, I need to be over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this line right about there on the 4 millimeter mark. So when I highlight this, yeah, I'm close enough to 4 millimeters. That's about where I want to be. The reason why I'm sticking it out 4 millimeters is because that's a pretty good rough distance that you need to be away to avoid having your mesh clip through a car body. If you have it in any further, you're going to get all kinds of weird reflections. Your mesh is going to clip into car bodies and it's going to look a little funny. I have found 4 millimeters to be a really good, like, happy medium where it's not so far out that it looks really stupid and not so far in that it clips and causes issues. So anyway, there we go. That is a basic little start to a grill. So there's a couple different ways that I can handle the reflections in this general area. It's a little bit, you see, it's all kind of blobby looking in here. So there's a couple things I can do. If I want to keep the mesh really simplified, what I can do is I can come over here into the mesh menu, and I can go down here to the shading menu, and I can sharpen the edges. And it doesn't do anything immediately, because what I have to do next is come over here into this little thing that looks like a triangle. This is called the Object Data tab. And let me go ahead and collapse some of these. You don't need to see any of these yet. Definitely don't need that. And I'm going to click this under the Normals tab. I'm going to click this Auto Smooth button, and I'm going to set the angle to something like 120 degrees. So now when I tab in, you'll see I have a nice sharp edge there, which is probably about what I want. So I've got pretty good containment everywhere to keep my reflections looking good here. Got pretty good containment to keep my reflections looking right along here. And so now all I need to do is, that's about it. I mean, everything's looking pretty good. I think we have our grill. So next thing I'll do is I'm going to assign some materials to it. And there's a couple of things. I think I'm going to do 3 materials for this grill. And before I do that, I'm going to actually Control R, and I want to put one edge loop in right about there. And I'm doing that, that'll help tighten up the reflections along this edge, but it's also going to help me assign a separate material. So let's go ahead and assign some materials. Let me just select everything, and I'm going to come over here to this little ball looking thing, and that's the Materials tab. And you're going to end up needing to make new materials if you haven't downloaded the Materials cube. Let me zoom out real quick and talk about the Materials cube. Highlight that. It's this guy right here. The Materials cube has all the materials you'll need to make fixtures and car bodies and rims and everything else already on it. It's a file that I've created as something that you can open and start your meshes with, and then it has all the materials you need to assign straight to your cars, to your fixtures, to your rims, to anything else. Just a handy little tool that I made for you guys. You can download that off of probably be Google Drive when I finally put it up there. It'll be up there by the time this video goes live, and it'll be complete. But if you're not going to do that, you'll come over here to the Materials tab, and you'll have to add one, and you'll have to actually make one. You'll hit a new one, and you'll name it something like Panel. All right, I'm going all caps here. Something like Panel 1. And you want to use the same naming conventions in Unreal, so that you don't have to rename these once you get into Unreal Engine. So Panel 1, Panel 2, grill 1 are some of the naming conventions, and you would make your new material. If I try to make panel 1, oh, actually lets me do it. And then you can always assign it a color and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to just go ahead and use panel 1, which is this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we assign it to everything. So now everything's assigned panel 1. Okay. So I want 2 more, right? I want panel 2 and I want grill. So let me go find panel 2, and you can make your own, or you can just use the ones I provided for you and make grill like that. Okay. So next what I want to do is I want to select this intersection, and I want this to be panel 2. So I'm going to Alt select this edge loop. I'm going to Alt Shift select this edge loop, and didn't quite get the whole thing. So I'm going to hit Shift and I'm going to grab the extra 2 vertices. I'm going to highlight panel 2. I'm going to assign it. So now you can see I got a different color in here. So now I'll be able to change that to a different color in game as well. So now what I want to do is select all of these guys, and I can kind of do the same thing I did before. Grab a corner over here, come over here, hit Control Shift, and then click the other corner, and now I have all these guys, and I can assign that to grill. So I've got all my grill materials all set, and that's a grill. Cool beans. We need one more thing to make this grill work, and we need a UVMesh to cut this hole out, because if we try to just put this into the game, when we put this in here, the car body would be connecting this whole area here, and you wouldn't see the grill at all. You have to cut the hole. So in order to cut the hole, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy this line right here, right? I'm going to turn it into a separate object. So I'm going to hit Shift-D to duplicate it. Now I've got this guy here, right? I'm going to hit P, which is going to bring up this little sub-menu, and I'm going to do by selection, and you'll see you got another plane. Right? So let's go ahead and name these real quick. This is grill, right? I'm going to name this call it grill UVMesh. That way I know it's a separate object. All right. So now let's talk about UV meshes a little bit here. The purpose of the UV mesh is to cut a hole in the body, and you might be tempted to just turn this into a grid with a bunch of vertices in the middle. That is going to slow down performance tremendously, and we don't want to do that. We want a fast-running UV mesh, which means we need to keep it simple. However, if it's too simple around the edge, you'll get a very jagged hole. So this would actually be fine with this particular grill because the grill has such an enormous bezel. But as you get into making more meshes, you'll make grills with much smaller, thinner bezels, and you'll want a finer cut hole. So let's talk about how to make that finer cut hole right now. The first thing I want to do, since I don't really need to I don't need to mirror anything anymore. Actually, let me tab out. Let me get rid of all the materials. I don't need any materials for the UV mesh. Let me tab back into edit mode, tab out of edit mode. Come over here to the modifier. I'm just going to apply the modifier. And now I have the entire thing ready to rock. So I'm going to select the entire thing, and I'm going to hit Control E, which is going to bring up a menu, and I'm going to subdivide it. And one subdivision is enough. And you'll see we have 96 vertices, and you don't really want to go over about 100. And you can go up to like 150 if you really need to. Some really big grills might need that. But 100 is a good target to be at, and see we're at 96. So we're in good shape. We're going to end up, I think, with 99 by the time we're done here. So let's go ahead and finish this up. And in order to finish this up, I'm going to grab this vertex here, and this one on the opposite side. There's another way to do that. I can actually hit Control-Shift-M to mirror my selection, and hit this extended guy here. That might be a little confusing for you guys. Maybe just don't worry about it. Just do it manually. The reason why I'm talking about that is because it's an incredibly useful shortcut when you're making car bodies, but let's just forget about it for now. Let's just do this. So we'll just manually select it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the F hotkey, and it's going to give me a line. And I'm going to use this line, and I'm going to subdivide it again, but this time I'm going to hit Control R, and I'm going to get 3 little cuts. And I'm just going to evenly splice them like that. So I have a vertex here, one over here, and one over here. So anyway, now I have these little three guys here selected. I'm going to actually connect the top and the bottom as well. So let me go ahead and do that and hit F, and I'll connect those two and I'll hit F, and that'll give me a nice little like crosshair looking thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this entire thing like so, and I'm going to deselect by hitting Shift and click. I'm going to deselect that. Now I'm going to extrude, and you'll see I have all this here. I'm going to right click to let go of it, and with everything still selected without doing anything else, I'm going to hit Shift, and I want to select this one in the middle, and I want to hit Alt-M and merge at the last. And what that's going to do, the last selection is the one that's highlighted in white right here. Since it's the last thing I selected, it's going to merge everything into that. So now I'm going to basically do this exact same thing that I just did on the other side. You could mirror this if you want to, doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and extrude, Alt-M, at last, and there we go. So now the next thing I want to do is I want all these to be relatively similar in length, but I mean this is okay right here because that's a nice short one. I'm looking at this one here. I might want to bring these in just a hair. So in order to do that evenly on both sides, I'm going to come up over here, and in Mesh Options, I'm going to click on X Mirror, and I want to turn off Auto Merge Editing. I'm kind of surprised that didn't cause me any problems already. But I want to turn on X Mirror so that when I edge slide this one, the other side comes along with it perfectly. So I'm just going to hit G twice, and I'm going to edge slide just until I think this line is about the same length as this line, roughly. And so if we select everything, you'll see we have 99 vertices, so we're inside of our budget of 100, and we have this UV mesh with lots of little edges around it. It's going to give us a nice clean hole when we stamp it into the car. So there we go. We have our UV mesh and we have our grill. So let me make sure, the last thing I want to make sure I do is I want to make sure that the UV mesh, let me go ahead and hit Control-3 to get in the side view. I need this to be right zeroed out on the y-axis. So with every vertice selected in edit mode, let me go ahead and hide the grill so that this isn't confusing. With everything selected, I'm just going to go right up in here and I'm going to type 0. And that's going to put everything right on the 0. Just like that. Cool. Alright, let's tab out. Let's get the grill back up. And now you can kind of see about what we're working with. We've got our UV mesh, which is going to cut the hole. And we've got our grill. Bada bing, bada boom. And hold on a second, where'd my materials go? Why are you not showing me the materials? Oh, I think they are. It's just I can't see them because I have the... Yeah, I'm an idiot. Okay, no, cool. Alright, so the only thing I have to do with the grill is apply the modifier, right? Bam, like so. Alright, we're almost done. We're almost ready to go. So let's go ahead and create a folder to put our little objects into. And I kind of talked about this maybe a little bit in the first video, but I created a dev folder where I put everything. And so in my dev folder I have a My Mods folder, and then in here I have various what I call FBX folders. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it FBX, and let's call it grill, call it snake grills. Right? Just give me one grill. Just call it a snake grill. So now I have somewhere to put my export files. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing. Let me get out of the... Hold on a second. That should actually have its own... All these FBX files should actually be in this FBX folder that I created. So let's put them in there. Okay, cool. So, and then, because I need two folders. I need one folder for my FBX files, and I need one folder for my mod. So let me go ahead and create that other folder now, right? And let's just call it Snake Grill Mod. There. So that's going to be for Unreal Engine, not for Blender. So anyway, now that I have my folder made, I can start exporting some of this stuff. The UV mesh is ready to go. So making sure that the scale is set to 1. If you did end up modifying your mesh in object mode and it changed the scale, no sweat, we can fix it. All you got to do is hit Control A, and you're going to hit this rotation and scale, or just scale right here, and that will zero out any rotation. It'll zero out your scale, or it'll make your scale 1, which is where it needs to be. So anyway, to export the UV mesh, let's go ahead and select the UV mesh, and I'm going to hit F2, and that's going to bring up a file context menu. You can also just come up here to File and hit Export, but I just prefer to hit F2. Brings up the export context, and we're going to export it in FBX format. So we got to go find our file, which for me was in Dev, My Mods, FBX Files, FBX Snake Grill. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it Snake Grill. No, sorry, this is Frank Grill UV Mesh. Perfect. Okay, so now one more thing I need to do is I need to come over here to the Export FBX options, and I need to selected objects, because I don't want to export the entire blend file. I only want to export the one object, and so the way I did that is I selected it first, and that's why it's highlighted. I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm just going to export that one object. And I'm going to come over here to the Geometry tab, and I'm going to change this smoothing to faces, and I'm going to change this, I'm going to click this box for tangent spaces, and not really important right now, but get in the habit of deselecting the Add Leaf Bones button. It doesn't really matter because we don't have a rig, but when we do headlights or bodies, we'll have rigs. So anyway, that's about it. We're going to hit Export FBX, and that is ready to go. Now we're about ready to export the grill, but not quite yet. I want to show you a couple of things to make the grill look better in the game. So let's tab into edit mode, and the first thing I need to do, this is definitely necessary, is I'm going to unwrap it. And it's a very simple process. You hit U to bring up the UV mapping window, and we're going to do a cube project, which you can hit C to make happen, or you can just highlight it here, and we're going to do a cube project. And it's going to bring up this little menu here, and I'm going to change this to 2 every time. And this is how you're going to do all your fixtures. Very, very simple. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is highlight everything, and I'm going to triangulate it. But here's the thing. Let me hit Control T and show you what happens. If I hit Control T, you have some triangles going this way, and then they meet up in the middle at a point, and then they start going the other direction. And it doesn't matter what you do. If you hit Fixed or Alternate or Shortest Diagonal, you always get this thing in the middle. So let me just hit Undo, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select half the mesh, just like this. There we go. Okay, now let me go ahead and hit 3 to get into face select mode. And then I'm going to hit Control T, and I'm going to select Fixed right now, so that it fixes the direction. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control I, and that's going to invert my selection. Now I'm going to hit Control T again, and you can see it kind of looks right, but I'm going to go ahead and do Fixed Alternate. It's the same thing. Ends up being the same thing. Now I have all these lines going like this, and this is going to solve. You're going to see a lot of issues with a lot of objects in the game have kind of a V reflection right here, and that's because the way that, and a lot of my fixtures have the same issue, and I just kind of learned about this fairly recently. So you can kind of fix that by manually doing, semi-manually doing your triangulation. So this is what we're looking for, is triangles all kind of going the same way and not meeting up and making a V. So this will cure our little V-shaped reflections issue that you see on lots and lots of grills and other fixtures. Alright, time for a little ninja edit. One thing I just forgot to talk about, I'm going to edit this and place it in here, is normal directions. And it's the way the directions of your materials are facing, or your faces are facing. So the way you're going to check to make sure everything's facing the correct direction is you're going to come over here to your Overlays menu, and you can do this one of two ways. You can hit Face Orientation, or you can come down here and you can hit this little guy like that. I've started using Face Orientation because I find it a little bit easier. So if everything is blue, you're good to go. If it's red, your normals are facing the wrong direction. So you want everything that's facing, you know, the player to be blue. If it is facing the wrong way, you can hit Shift-N, and that'll bring up this little context down here. It says Make Normals Consistent, and you can't see it because the keyboard's in the way. You're going to click this. There's an inside button here. Let me actually, let me go ahead and take that down. I should probably move that. So anyway, there's a little context menu. You can flip it. You can click this little button here for inside and everything else. Yeah. And so anyway, that's how you'll make sure your normals are facing the right way. Turns out we're in good shape. Let me check my UVMesh, and here you can see the UVMesh is facing all kinds of different directions. I don't think it really matters, but I'm maybe just a little bit anal about it, so I'm going to go ahead and fix my normals. And as you can see, it brings them up backwards, so I'm going to hit that little inside button, and now it's all fixed. So now I'm going to go ahead and re-export that, and that should be good enough for this Ninja edit. So that's it. We're going to export it in the same way we just did the UVMesh, right? Hit F2, bring up FBX. We're going to come over here and kind of reuse the name. I'm just going to take the UVMesh off of it, Snake Grill. Maybe I'll give it Conform. Call it Conform for Conforming Mesh. And there we go. Alright, so with the grill exported, that pretty much covers modeling a grill and getting it out of Blender. The next step in the next video we'll talk about is getting it into Unreal Engine and getting it into Automation the game. We'll cover that in the next video. Till then, see you later.